Right. And we are live, so we will go ahead and get started. And I will call the March 18th, 2021 regular meeting of the Franklin City School Board to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. First item up, do we have a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that the school board, having been in closed session pursuant to a proper motion, come out of closed session.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then moving by ward. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries. Next up is certification of our closed session. Do we have a certification?
Whereas the Franklin City Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712.d of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Franklin City School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then moving by ward. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, abstain.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. Next up, we have motions from closed session. I believe we have one item, which is personnel agenda. Do we have a motion in regards to the personnel agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the personnel agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then moving by ward. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries. Next up is our Pledge of Allegiance. Since we are not in chambers and don't have the real deal right in front of us, Ms. Moore has been so kind to provide us with one right there within our board docs. So if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up is approval of the agenda. Did anyone have anything to add or any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second and a third. It's like Thanksgiving. Any discussion? Hearing none, then moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2. The agenda is approved. Next up is roll call. Ms. Moore, will you lead the way?
Mr. Robert Holt,
Here.
Amy Phillips,
Present.
Tanya Smith,
I'm here.
Marshall. Tanya Smith is here. Okay. Marshall Williams,
Present.
Dr. Andrea Shelton,
Present.
Jerry McCreary,
Present.
Carrie Johnson.
I'm here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore. Next up is citizens' time. Ms. Moore, did we have anyone that submitted anything or that requested to speak?
No, we did not. No, we did not. Did you?
Okay. That takes us right down to item number 3, which is our consent agenda. We only have 2 items. First is group health employee contribution. This was the presentation Mr. Ryder gave us at our last meeting in regards to the health insurance premiums. Looking at the out of pocket, that the percentage that contributors were paying based upon the plan that they were in. And he was suggesting redistributing that percentage and the division picking up some of that to make those plans more affordable for our employees. So we didn't vote on that. And so he is requesting a vote to reallocate those contribution percentages to be in line with that previous slide. So 18% for employee only, 22% for the employee plus one, and then 30% for the employee plus family. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right, hearing none, then the second item is the minutes from February the 18th meeting, our regular meeting in February. Any questions in regards to that? Hearing none, do I have a motion in regards to the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, do we need to make a motion to accept those contributions as they were stated?
We do need to vote to accept those contributions as stated, yes. So the consent agenda will cover both of those items. If we approve the consent agenda as presented, because the recommendation is actually written into that item.
Okay. Well, I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity, and we'll move by ward.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. The consent agenda is approved. Next up, item 4, finance and operations. Dr. Sterling, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I would like
Good
to
evening.
present Mr. Jeff Ryder to present the financial report. Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Dr. Sterling. So this is the financial report for the February period ending February 28th, 2021. 8 months into the year. This is my standard language for the background information for the budget. A reminder that we have a $703,000 deficit goal to reach this year. And to draw people's attention to General Fund 10 is where most of the revenues expenses are incurred by the division, and that is where the figure is tallied for the city's rollover amount in Fund 10 in the general fund. The other funds are restricted and they are presented separately. So the first income statement here is the general fund 10, and I am having trouble with this tonight. I can't see. Oh boy, I minimized.
That looks good on my end, Mr. Ryder.
There we go. Okay, there we go. I'm going to have to, I can't reduce the size on my screen. Okay, so I'm just going to have to go with, usually I have the two screens and I can kind of adjust the size on my end, but but I remember, all right, so most of the stuff, but the revenues are pretty much coming in on track. The state revenues are lagging behind with 67% of the year gone. Some of the revenue streams of the state funding do start in January. So those do lag behind a little bit. The city appropriations, they will end up $703,000 lower than what we put in the budget, and that is the deficit figure that we need to shoot for. The salaries and benefits for the instruction, all of these budget figures have been modified to account for the bathroom projects and the rollover funds. That's why you'll see down there the operations and maintenance other category is so large. And so the bathroom project, they are going to be slated, now that we're back to in-person learning. I had to find an opening for them to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to have all of the payments entered into the financial statements between now and June 30th. And they're going to start the project around June 15th when classes end and the schools will be empty, the elementary school will be empty. So that, that $706,000 there at February 28th is going to go, way up. Yeah. And so I think we'll end that up at about 2.3 million, just about where we said we would. All of the other categories are within $50,000 or $60,000 of plus or minus. And but when they net out, if you could scroll down, Tammy, the deficit that we're projecting a little bit, there's about 519,000. Did I see?
Scroll up just a hair, Tammy, to the bottom of that previous. There
we go. about $520,000. So Dr. Sterling and I, let's see, usually at the end of March is the end of the third quarter. And then April, May, and June is when when I start. Last year I did this. We actually look at it on a weekly basis of what is encumbered, what's paid, every single expense item that has not been incurred. And we zero that thing right down into exactly where we need to be. We have expenditures that we're going to hold off, and if we need them, we make them. And if not, if we don't need them, then we'll just come in we're exactly where we're supposed to be. So all is on track. The next fund, or the next income statement, is the textbook fund. We usually I don't send the money over to that fund until June, but we are intentionally spending it into deficit. Again, I'll remind everyone, we do have to spend it in the deficit because you can see the beginning bank balance there was just too high. And so we have to spend that into deficit to get it down. Ideally, we'd like to spend it all, But I believe there's another adoption that I think Ms. Burkhalter is probably going to be presenting sometime soon. Science, I think it is. And then the nutrition. Yeah, the nutrition, as much as, you know, as much as we try to get that down, we do have a higher reimbursement rate this year. And I just found out the other day that they're going to extend the summer SFSP reimbursement program through the end of September. So even going into the new year, we'll have probably a positive variance, and we'll probably have to meet to, you know, discuss a spend down plan. Not something unusual for this fund. Had them for the last couple of years. Didn't need one last year because of the pandemic, but so we're in very good shape in the nutrition fund. And then the overall, could you scroll to the left a little, Tammy? I can't see that far over to the left. No. No, could you reduce it a little? I can't see that. This is the overall. Okay, so I think this is the overall. Yeah, I think this is the overall income statement. I can't see the upper left there, but this is the overall income statement. You know, most of the deficit there is exactly where it's supposed to be. If all the grants are if we receive all the funding like we're supposed to, you know, the overall will be the 703 that the general fund is, but we always lag behind in the grants, and so it's probably going to be, you know, a little more than 700,000 because the grants, you know, the reimbursements always lag the expenditures. And I believe that's probably it for, yeah, that's it for the financial statements for February. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ryder, this is Jerry McCreary at Ward 6.
Yes, Jerry.
Can you remind me, local other on the funding, what that, where that comes from, other than the, you know, as opposed to the appropriation?
Yeah, other than the city appropriation, local other, that would be like really any kind of fundraising or grants that we get. For example, last year, the Southampton Charities donated $55,000 to our division for whiteboards, you know. And so wherever we can, you know, like the international paper will sometimes give us money. So it's just basically division level fundraising on a local level. That's where it all funnels into. It's a pretty small number.
Okay, so it's from the community, not from the city directly.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
I see. Yes. And these three funds, let's see, yeah, Fund 10, 9, and 8. Are those the only ones that the city appropriates money to?
The city appropriates only to Fund 10.
Fund 10, okay.
Yeah, Fund 9 is a actual one stream of revenue from the state of Virginia, textbook fund. And Fund 8 is the U.S. Department of Agriculture mainly funds that. Sometimes we sell stuff to, you know, when we open up things called a la carte in our cafeterias, we, you know, sell stuff to kids. And yeah, you know, in prior years, that was quite a bit of money, actually, is, you know, about over $100,000 between the three schools. So that was local, you know, funds that would go into there. But anything that does go into the cafeteria fund has to be spent in the it has to be spent in the cafeteria fund. It can't be moved for any other purpose.
So local other under nutrition, that would have been something like that where you're selling.
Yeah. And you'll see it dropped off quite a bit from budget and from last year. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Okay, so there was a second presentation from operations this time. This was 2 days, not yet. I think it was yesterday. Can you scroll down? This was time flies when you're having fun. Yes, this was yesterday. We had a tiny capacitor that regulates the electric flow to our HVAC, one of our HVAC units in the ceiling of the SP Morton, right there in the lobby, right when you walk in. And it was a capacitor, and it began to melt because it was overheating. And so it began to smolder and create a lot of smoke. But unfortunately, it was right next to an air intake, and the air intake was sucking it in and pushing it out through our HVAC system. And so some of the classrooms in the front of the building started smoke coming out of the vents. So our maintenance team was called, and they were on the scene within minutes. Very quickly diagnosed the problem and basically had the problem resolved. There was no need for fire extinguishers or anything like that. They just pulled the ceiling tile down. There it was, and they unbolted it and brought it out of the ceiling. But out of an abundance of caution, we called the fire department to just to make sure and to reassure everybody. It was almost like one of those airplane evacuations. All the kids were taken out of the buildings and put onto our entire bus fleet was there within minutes, and took them to the Martin Luther King Center, J.P. King, and Franklin High School, and everybody got home. It was one of the smoothest, it was kind of a very impressive emergency response to a very small problem, but a very, very good response by everybody. Here's the culprit. I have that in my office. It's the capacitor that really, really burned to a crisp itself. And then I was outside. I had to do something with my camera and my time. So I grabbed a couple of pictures of the fire departments. There they are. There's all of our buses responding. And here are the guys, even before I told them to do it, they were already up checking the rest of the capacitors on the other units, because we have more than one unit in the ceiling of the elementary school. And because this has actually nothing to do with the smoke incident, but I thought I wanted to share with you how nice the reception areas look. These are the things that we bought at the height of the pandemic last year. And we finally got around to getting them installed, and they look absolutely beautiful. And here's the one in the main office at the elementary school. Actually, this is the first time I've seen this. I haven't been over to the elementary school since yesterday, but these were put up, so very nice looking. So that's that. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Ryder? Mr. Ryder, I will add, because you did note, you referenced when we're talking about that capacitor, the maintenance team jumping in. The maintenance team has really been working overtime this week because not only did they have that incident on Thursday, but they were really working hard to get prepared for the First Lady of Virginia's visit on yesterday morning as well. So I wanted to make sure to give a shout out to the maintenance team for both of those. They've really been hustling, and it showed, and thank you to them.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to move to the next presentation, Federal Programs, with Dr. Natalie Holleran.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, we have two grants that we would like to present for approval. The first grant is for the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act funding. That's the $2.5 million that you've been hearing about over the past month. That grant award period is from March 13th, 2020, which means expenses could possibly go back and be eligible back then, all the way through September 30th, 2023. But the one caveat is that funding from the previous CARES Act funding must now be spent before we can spend this funding. So again, this funding can be spent after we spend the other funding, even though expenses can go back to last year around this time. And the primary purpose of this funding allocation is to provide emergency relief, to school divisions. The that are impacted by COVID-19. We know that we continue to have implications of COVID-19, and this funding will definitely help out, and the division will benefit from using it in the following ways. We're recommending in the area of personnel to support the additional custodians that are needed, guidance counselors, human resource specialists, bus drivers, stipends, and grants coordinators. And this is all funding to support, again, the personnel that will help us with the implications of COVID, contracted services, mental health services that are there to support families, staff, and students. The Grow Your Own Teacher Education Program that I presented on, I believe, at the last session, that addresses our partnership with the institutions of higher education. At the current moment, we're partnering with Camp Community College, so that's off to a great start. And of course, additional sanitization materials and supplies that we will continue to need, especially as we are transitioning back to on-site teaching and learning. And then capital outlay, facilities upgrades to include module classrooms, I believe at the elementary school level, and facilities upgrade to include the touchless toilets. And again, you may have noticed that some of this funding will help support or continue to help to support funding items that were initially funded and supported through the $617,000 that we received at the beginning of the school year, our first allocation of CARES Act funding. Are there any questions about this particular grant before we go to the next grant award?
Any questions for Dr. Holloran on the CRRSA?
Okay, the next one should be the 21st Century grant that we have currently at SP Morton Elementary School and JP King Junior Middle School. The VDOE will fund up to $200,000. And of course, we request the entire $200,000 so we can maximize the resources to support both school sites. It's a competitive grant award, and the award period is from July 1, 2021 through August 30th, 2022. This is actually a grant that will be awarded, or you're approved for a three-year cycle, and you'll just have to, at the end of each of the first 2 years, just submit an additional continuation application, but you are initially approved for up to $200,000 for each of the 3 years. We're requesting funding to support part-time after-school teachers to support the after-school extended learning program. There are site coordinators at each school that kind of monitor, ensure implementation is occurring as it should. And there's always a division contact that provides support to the site coordinators in the schools and serve as the primary contact between the school division and the Virginia Department of Education. As far as support and resources, an extended collaboration with Boys and Girls Club to support with enrichment and family engagement activities, as well as after-school academic enrichment and professional development for teachers that are involved, to primarily support in the areas of literacy, reading, and mathematics, instructional materials and supplies to support the program, as well as other partnerships that we're excited about with Camp Community College. I spoke to Dr. Atkins Brady yesterday, and they're excited about partnering with us to provide workshops on higher education, transitioning to higher education with families and students starting at an early age, especially at the elementary level, thinking about that next phase as you transition in education, as well as possibly some tutoring. Cover 3 Foundation to continue to provide snacks during the after school and summer program. Have any questions about this particular 21st Century grant?
This is Jerry at Ward 6. Both of these grants, actually, how do they, would they affect like summer school teaching or additional education that our students are needing?
Actually, funding goes throughout the summer, but since this is a new award cycle of the 3-year cycle, they say the award period is from July 1, but we will not find out if we were awarded until August. But for next school year, the summer of 2022, funding definitely can be utilized to support or enhance whatever instructional program we have in place in the school division.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Holloran in regards to the 21st Century grant? Hearing none, do we have let's take these two separately. So do we have a motion in regards to the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, so the CRRSA?
Madam Chair, I move we approve that grant.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the CRRSA?
Yes, this is Jerry, Ward 6.
Okay.
Back to my previous question. I'm trying to understand how these, from the educational part, direct education of our students, how this can further help them. I don't know if that can be addressed a little bit more.
Well, the
As far as time
CRRSA,
or instruction time.
right, the CRRSA is not just for, the intent for that is not just for instruction. It's for services that are needed in addition to instruction as well. So that's where we get those mental health services and the counselors and the additional bus drivers, because of course seating is still limited on buses, things of that nature. And then facilities upgrade falls underneath that as well. So for instance, I won't use our school, but Appomattox Regional Governor's School, for instance, there was discussion about, well, not even their school. Some schools have had issues where their HVAC was not where it needed to be able to have proper ventilation. So that is something that can be covered by the CRRSA. Would that's an accurate summation on that, Dr. Holloran?
Yes, and at the bottom where I had the purpose, next to the second part of that statement, it says funds, the purpose of the funds is to provide emergency relief to address the impact that COVID-19 has had and continues to have on schools. So you're correct, Ms. Phillips, to address any area, not just instruction, but the other areas that impact instruction. You have to have a building that's conducive to learning. So anything that impacts that teaching and learning can be considered for funding. And they've actually expanded on the allowable use of funding compared to what was offered when we first received funding, the 617 back in the fall, because at that time you could not really use that particular funds that was competitive for facilities upgrade. So they've now seen that as time has gone on, that divisions need more support and resources so they can ensure that students have a safe and sanitized building facility to come back to, and staff as well.
Thank you.
Does that help clarify a little bit, Mr. McCurry?
Yes.
So, and I will say the first, for instance, back when the first round of COVID funds was very restrictive on what you could use it for. And I mean, it was like mostly just PPE and cleaning. And now this has expanded quite a bit because they realize that the impacts of COVID are much more far-reaching than just a mask you can put on and sanitation. Any other questions in regards to the CRRSA before we proceed? All right, hearing none, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor moving by ward signify by saying aye, and of course nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries. So next up is the 21st Century Grant. Do I have a motion in regards to the 21st Century Grant?
I move to approve the 21st Century Community Grant as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none, then moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Ward 1, Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion carries as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Holleran.
Transitioning to human resources and the COVID-19 vaccination update. It's great to see and know that most of the staff, as time go on, are receiving their first and second COVID-19 vaccinations. Actually, today, we had approximately 30 staff members to receive their second dosage. They were part of the group that was when Will Drury had given us a call and said, hey, we have 30 dosages available. Can you get 30 staff members, over to the Workforce Development Center last month? And we were able to get over there within 10 to 15 minutes, making those telephone calls. So those 30 staff members definitely received theirs today. As well as on March 8th, we sent out an email to all staff, letting them know about a special vaccination session that was being held on March 11th, which was last week at the Workforce Development Center. We're continuously surveying staff to see if we're still in need for those to get vaccinated. And we are networking with the Virginia Department of Health as well as the Western Tidewater Regional Health Department staff to ensure that we provide those opportunities. On March 11th, last week, we had 33 Franklin City Public School staff members who were able to receive their first COVID-19 vaccination. And that's a picture of one of our staff members receiving her COVID-19 vaccination. And then on the 12th, we sent a survey out just to see and receive an update to see if additional staff still needed to have their first COVID-19 vaccination. Can we go to the next slide, please, Ms. Moore? So we took a survey, and the survey just has the location to show you where the numbers of those who were represented at different work locations. So we had a total of 140 staff members that participated, and we're still receiving updates since this has been done. The next slide, Ms. Moore. And we didn't have like 10 or 15 questions like we've had in the past. We just pretty much wanted to know, have you received your first COVID-19 vaccination? Because again, in partnership with the Virginia Department of Health and the local region, we're trying to make sure everyone receives the vaccinations that they need. So we had 142, again, that responded, and 142 answered. 102 said yes, they received it. 40 said no. The next slide. And out of the 40 that responded to know if they haven't had their first vaccine dosage by then, we wanted them to enter a date, and 3 of them entered a date. 35 did not enter a date, and 2 skipped that question. The next slide. And then due to health conditions, we wanted to know how many had a health condition, which was the reason why they did not, and 5 said yes. So we had, again, 40, if we go to the next slide, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, you can go back down. Thank you. So again, we had about 40 staff who said they did not receive their dosage yet. And we had about 25 to 30, I believe, staff members who did not respond. But since then, the Human Resources team has been reaching out to administrators and department heads to say, these are the list of your staff members. If you could please ensure that they participate so we can make sure that everyone is provided the opportunity to receive their vaccinations as we transition back into on-site teaching and learning. So in partnership again with the Western Tidewater Region and Virginia Department of Health, one day next week, information should be hopefully coming out tomorrow. Another session will be designated for Franklin City Public School staff members. So hopefully all staff who would like to have the vaccination will definitely, this next and last round should hopefully receive it. So we're continuously, again, surveying staff to see how many more do we need, and we're ensuring that we have those opportunities provided for them to receive it for those who would like to. Any questions about the vaccination status before we transition to the other part of the human resources presentation on staffing? Okay, Ms. Moore. The next section is on staffing. We sent Ms. Scott sent out a news release to let you know about the huge virtual sessions that we've been having, hiring sessions we've been having. These are some of the vacancies that are posted. It's great that we've had lots of applicants to apply all over. we're going through a huge, you can turn to the next slide, Ms. Moore, a huge recruitment effort. We have the flyers that's been sent out. The press releases again have gone out. We're going to participate in the Ed Week Virtual National Career Fair on March 25th. And our site is actually up. So those who are going to participate nationally are able to see that we will be participating. Job vacancies are also noted through, again, the news releases and postings via various media outlets. I'm sure you've been hearing some of the radio announcements. I know I've been hearing them when I've been at work, and I've been noticing on the local television station, the Franklin City Public Schools posting and virtual job fair that's occurring. So it's great to see that we're maintaining those ongoing communications. We have reached out to the institutions of higher education so we can try to really get some of those early commitments from some of the graduates that'll be graduating very soon. So that's something we're doing to partner with local universities. So we're maximizing our efforts to ensure that we can capture and attract the best of the best for Franklin City Public Schools through the various job fairs that we're participating in. Are there any questions about the virtual job fair or any of the vacancies?
Any questions for Dr. Holleran in regards to the vacancies or the job fair? I think we're good, Dr. Holleran.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Next, I'm going to share with the board the March 2021 reopening of schools. It was a very eventful week and exciting for our children that have returned to in-person learning. So as you can see, this is a picture of SP Morton, and they are at lunch and they're social distancing. And this is just one of the strategies that we put in place and making certain that we are compliant with CDC guidelines. So our children are safe, happy, and they are excited to be back to in-person learning. Next. The hybrid phase 1 on March 15th, 2021, students returned to classrooms on a hybrid schedule. SP Morton Elementary will have their hybrid schedule that was approved by the board, 3 days of in-person and 2 days virtual, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays in person, and Thursday and Friday, they have virtual learning. Our day camp and Boys and Girls Club are still servicing our students whose parents need that additional support. JP King will be hybrid as well. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in-person learning. This week they had 6th and 7th grade. So that was really exciting to go visit SP Morton as well as JP King. Next. Last, I had the opportunity to visit Franklin High School. They are on a hybrid schedule and they only have their 9th and 10th graders this week. And on phase 2, they'll be introducing the rest of the their classmates. So you have a hybrid schedule, 2 days a week and 3 days of virtual. 9th and 10th, we're here on Monday and Tuesday, grades again, 9th and 10th. Caveat, all special ed and L students are to follow their class schedule as well. So those that are opting to stay with their class will come back next week with the 11th and 12th. Next. Just to give you an overview of what's happening in the buildings and how many students are actually in the buildings. Students that signed up for hybrid and virtual instruction at SP Morton, we have 225 students that elected to come back to the in-person hybrid model. And you have 270 students whose parents elected for them to remain virtual. SP Morton students that receive transportation are approximately 153. Next, you have students at JP King. We have 137 that have elected to be on the hybrid model, and 99 have elected to remain virtual. 76 students have requested transportation. and are receiving transportation. Students at FHS, you have 149 that are on the hybrid and 140 that elected to remain virtual. Out of those students, 131 are receiving transportation. So the overall attendance for March 15th, in-person instruction for all three schools, you had 234, and March 16th, we had 246. Next. Breaking it down even more, I know this is small for phase 1, SP Morton, for March 15th, 16th, and 17th. That was the first day, second day, and third day. You have the numbers for pre-K through fifth grade. For a total on day 1, we had 121 students. Day 2 was 119, and day 3 was 126. Attendance for JP King for phase 1, for day 1 and 2 numbers, you have for 6th, 7th, and of course, 8th grade comes back next week, but you did have one that came on day 2. So you had 55 total and 65 on day 2. Day 1 and 2. Miss Moore, you don't have day 3 because Miss Moore has a strict, unfortunately, I do apologize, cutoff. So if you didn't get your numbers in, then I'll have to make certain I'll report that next week. But you have days 1 and 2, and Franklin only had 2 days. For March 15th, he had a total, Mr. Phelps had a total of 58 students, and March 16th, a total of 62 students. As you can see, this is SP Morton's first day. There is Miss Gillette. We are so excited to have her return back from having a beautiful baby girl this fall. So she's making certain she's taking temperatures. Students are in the cafeteria. They are social distance. And as you can see, students are required to wear their mask getting on and off the bus. And our wonderful bus driver has their mask on as well. All right, there is JP King. As you see the plastic plexiglass, as they come in, they're greeted by a staff member, and then you have them actually taking their breakfast that is already in a plastic bag, and it's, it's locked, airtight. The students pick up their breakfast and they walk to class. JP King's first day, they have their team stationed right at the front door. So as you walk in, they're taking temperatures, they're giving schedules if students need them, and they're walking down to their classes. As you can see, the students are walking to their classes and they are social distance. In the middle picture, as you can see, the classrooms are very well spaced apart, and the students are a little bit more than 6 feet away from one another. And this is JP King as their cafeteria time as well. Thank you. FHS first day, 2 to a table only, which usually sits about 5 and 6. This is their library time where they're still able to do virtual learning. And as you can see, they are social distance, and you have the plexiglass and everyone has their mask on. And this is how they're walking down. Mr. Phelps has an amazing video that he has launched on his website and sent to all parents on what to do and what not to do at FHS. And all the students, as you can see, are following those guidelines, as well as the teacher that looks like Mr. Smith leading his students to the classroom. Again, additional pictures of social distancing. As you can see, there's normally 2 to 3 students that can sit at the table. Some of the tables are marked, letting students know that this is the only area that you can sit in, and everyone else will have to go to either another desk so they can space out and be social distanced. And next, I want to highlight We had an amazing visitor. This week we had two, actually. Our First Lady, Miss Pamela Northam, Secretary of Education, Mr. Quirky, visited Franklin High School. First Lady Pamela Northam and our secretary visited Franklin High School on Wednesday to celebrate the school division's opening their doors to in-person learning. We were greeted when she walked through the doors with a dozen of Krispy Kreme donuts. So we want to say thank you. She was bearing gifts, but we wanted to, there she is with her Krispy Kreme donuts. As you can see, Mr. Phillips is greeting her. She had her Look of the Irish green on. She came in, and one of the highlights, she was able to meet and talk to students in our CTE programs, as well as our academic programs. She also had the opportunity in this particular picture that was captured to have a candid audience with our mayor and city manager. And we're very fortunate that they were able to be there and greet First Lady Northam. And then she's taking a picture with our culinary arts students that were very excited to see her, as well as the Secretary of Education. Again, it was a very eventful week, but the board approved an in-person learning plan, and it is going very well. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments for Dr. Sterling?
I'm just going to say this. If you
I
don't,
will say it's been a great week back, starting week back. My experience within my household has been great with that transition back into the classroom. Wednesday's visit with First Lady Northam and Secretary Carney was wonderful. They were very engaged with the students, very attentive to all of our students, and our students were absolutely phenomenal. Every single one of them. And I will say, and I'm sure I am conveying Dr. Sterling's sentiments as well, thank you to everyone that had a hand in the First Lady's visit and Secretary's visit on Wednesday morning. I know many hands played a part in that. Dr. Holleran, Mr. Phelps, the assistant principals at the high school, the staff at the high school, the maintenance department, because I know they were cracking down the whip and getting things done beforehand to make sure that everything was as it needed to be. The culinary arts students and team, they were absolutely phenomenal. They were there at 4:30 Wednesday morning to prepare. So those students were on it. You had students in a science class that were there that normally might not have been. You had, I know I'm missing people, Miss Harris, Miss Burkhalter, of course, Dr. Sterling, and Mr. Holt as well. It was so many hands that played a part in this event going as smoothly as it did, and I thank each and every one of you. And I do believe that First Lady Northam was very excited to be here as well and enjoy the interaction with our students.
Yes, I want to thank everyone as well. And I concur, Amy. Thank you, because I was just about to do my thank yous, but I definitely concur. But I want to, before I end this conversation, give one specific highlight to, it does escape me, the student's name. She was in a dual enrollment class, and this is particularly for Dr. Shelton, because I made certain I was going to mention this evening. First Lady Northam asked, is there any questions? And you normally get the typical, how do you like being a first lady? What's happening in the governor's office? But this particular student, a Franklin City Public School student, asked, what are you doing for mental health for students in the public education system? And she personally addressed suicide and depression, and the support that is needed for all children. And I was just simply outdone. I'm so proud of the work of our teachers, just being able to foster that critical thinking mindset of our children. But Dr. Shelton, I knew you'd be proud of that student. I'm going to get her name because she is going to change the world, as they all are. But that one really stood out for me because it's something that we truly need to focus on as we bring students back to in-learning instruction. That support is so critical with mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. And that
Thank
concludes
you,
the
Dr. Sterling.
superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, next up is business by school board members. Do any board members have anything they wish to share with the board? All right, hearing none, we're moving down to important dates to remember. We got a busy couple of weeks coming up. Monday is our joint session with City Council. That will be at 6 o'clock in City Council chambers. All COVID protocols are still, of course, in effect. So social distance, mask wearing, all of that. Next Friday, we have our first Vsba Master Board training. That is virtual. You should have received a Zoom invitation for that from Ms. Moore. If you do not recall receiving it, please reach out to her and let her know, and she'll get that resent out to you. And of course, our work session for April is on the very first day of April, April 1st. And then the division will be closed starting the next day for the spring break holiday. I know everyone's looking forward to kind of getting a break. We're just kind of getting back in our groove good with in-person instruction, but it's been a long time since January 1st. I know the staff is looking forward to a much needed break moving into that. And then, of course, after spring break, we'll come right back and go right straight into a meeting that week. So that's our next month coming up. Any questions in regards to that? Right behind that, we have minutes. These are for review only, of course, for right now. We will, those will be back before us next month for vote. That is our minutes from our work session earlier this month. And that brings us to item number 8, everyone's least favorite part of the night, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion of that item?
None.
Hearing none, then we will move by ward and vote. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. And of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. We are adjourned. I will see everyone on Monday at the joint session. I hope that each and every one of you have a wonderful and fabulous weekend. Thank you for being with us tonight. Good night, everyone.